Chapter 1, January, New Beginnings, Destination Unknown, as told by Jim Teeter. I don't want to start over again. A look back over the past 55 years was discouraging. God's purpose and plan for my life seemed permanently derailed. I had started over so many times, and it wasn't just me who was affected. My wife and family had traveled with me down those long, arduous comeback roads. My cognitive abilities were intact, but repeated traumatic head injuries resulted in brain damage. Fear was my nemesis. It dogged every step, every breath. The only thing I was afraid of was death. As a Christian, that was embarrassing, something I didn't often share. I was too stubborn to let it destroy me, but hope was just a thin thread which I clutched desperately. Perhaps most devastating was the almost imperceptible loss of the ability to grasp abstract concepts. I could process tangible or concrete information, but those things I couldn't see or touch were a complete mystery. I knew something was missing, but I couldn't fix it, and I couldn't get around it. Abstracts might not be a big deal for others, but for me, it cut to the core of my faith in God. How could I believe in something as abstract as an invisible God when my brain refused to compute? And how could I accept the assurance of my eventual home in heaven when I was unable to process that intangible concept? We lived in Spokane, Washington area. It seemed like every time I went anywhere, some sort of road rage episode would occur, kicking my panic into high gear. One incident left me with the sense I would have no peace until I relocated to a quieter environment. I was driving down the freeway in busy traffic when a car some distance ahead slammed on its brakes. Everyone around me stopped, and I was trapped. Anyone who has experienced the shock of a severe panic attack can perhaps identify with my irrational response. I shut the car off, left it parked in the middle of the freeway, and almost unaware of my surroundings and the danger they represented, made my way to the guardrail, where I hung on for dear life. When a stranger came to ask if I were okay, I was finally able to pull myself together. Another time, a full-sized pickup tried to pass me on the narrow, unpaved road leading to our home. I blocked his attempt to pass, and then was horrified to see two young skateboarders in the road as we crested the next hill. The scene triggered a replay of my own brush with death and my first brain trauma as I was hit by a car at the age of 13. Instead of being grateful that I kept him from hurting two young children, the other driver pulled in front of me to force me to stop and yelled at me for slowing him down. Each of these encounters reinforced my sense of danger and made me long for a quieter and safer existence. I didn't want to relocate, but it seemed the only way. Eventually, doors opened for us to move halfway across the country to Cody, Wyoming. We packed up a lifetime of hopes and dreams, loaded them into a 27-foot U-Haul, a 12-foot trailer, and our overstuffed Chevy, and hit the road. We had 250 miles to cover before stopping for the night in Missoula. Loaded down as we were, we could only travel 55, and the trip seemed interminable. I was by myself in the truck. My earlier years as a truck driver served me well as I moved through the familiar gears and watched the city lights fade from my rearview mirror. For company, I inserted one of our new country cross band CDs and let the words of the song God had given me wash over my exhausted mind. A drive down the road with the radio on, and the words of a song spoke life to my mind, that I'd been content to find my own way, but then realized and caused me to say, all that you've planned for the rest of my life is perfect. A future of hope, despite all the strife, is perfect. Lord, you know that I choose to follow your life, an example for others to see, and you know what's best for me, and it's perfect, perfect, perfect. Country Cross Band, 2008. I let my mind wander. God's ways didn't seem perfect to me. Change is difficult at best for those of us with brain damage. I found relief in the ordinary, in routine and sameness. This move cut across all my comfort zones. The stress was unimaginable, the fear tangible. Only the hope that I might find refuge in a smaller community kept me moving forward. As I drove, more mundane matters interrupted my thinking. I obsessed about how to lock up the U-Haul truck I was driving when we reached our destination for the night. I was exhausted, and my befuddled brain considered the problem from every angle. How could I rest if all our worldly goods were unprotected for the night? The truck was a new model that required an unusual type of padlock, only available at official U-Haul stores. However, none of the 3 U-Haul outlets in the Spokane area we had contacted had that padlock in stock. As we entered the Missoula city limits well after dark, my best hope was to find something at an all-night grocery or convenience store that would provide at least some level of safekeeping for our possessions. The 2 dilemmas seemed to dovetail in my thought processes. Both reflected my quest for safety, protection, and assurance. The lock was a concrete, tangible need for protecting our belongings, while what I sought in the abstract realm of the spirit was more of a need to know what I couldn't understand, to be assured of what I was unable to grasp. Still musing, I left the truck on the street and walked into the almost deserted Albertsons store. Heading for the hardware aisle, I stopped at the meager supply of padlocks and sighed. Missoula is a college town. Most of the assorted locks were suitable only for school lockers, or perhaps to temporarily secure a bicycle to a rack. As I turned to go, I heard a kindly voice behind me. "Can I help you?" the middle-aged man asked. "I'm looking for a lock for the truck I'm driving," I replied. "Is that it across the parking lot?" "Yes." "Follow me." Thinking he worked for the store and was guiding me to additional padlock resources, I fell in behind him, but he headed for the exit. Confused and a bit cautious, some inner urging still prompted me to go with this stranger into the darkened parking lot. Oddly, he stopped at a 1987 K car and opened the trunk. The car was impeccably clean, with absolutely nothing in the trunk but an unopened U-Haul bubble pack containing the exact lock I needed for my truck. "Will this work?" he asked. "Of course," I replied. "That's the padlock made for it." He cut the package open, handed me the padlock and one of the 2 keys before sticking the other key in his pocket. By nature, slightly cynical and more than a little paranoid, I thought for just a second he might be setting me up. Would he let me have this lock, but later go and use his own key to steal me blind? Considering the rest of the circumstances surrounding our meeting, that scenario didn't seem likely. We walked to the truck together and set the perfectly fitted padlock into place. I was so grateful. I asked if I could give him $20 for the lock. He refused my money, but welcomed one of our CDs. He told me to drop it by the service desk at Albertsons with his name on it. After telling me his name was Doug, also my middle name, we chatted for a few more minutes, and I asked him where he was from. "I'm from where you're going," was his cryptic response. "But I didn't tell you where I was going," I countered. "We'll see, won't we?" Up to this point, I had assumed my encounter was with one of the store's employees, but this curious turn of events gave me pause. Not only had this rather ordinary man provided me with a unique padlock to meet my urgent physical need, but he also now extended a challenge which drew my attention to the spiritual. His statement cut through all the arguments and religious rhetoric about heaven, claiming that he, although very real, was from that abstract destination I couldn't grasp. As I joined my wife at the hotel and shared with her the amazing experience, the impact of what had just happened finally connected. I broke down and wept at the goodness of the God who loved me and had again met my need, both physically and in my ability to recognize and accept my unseen destination, heaven. The next morning, before leaving town, I pulled one of our new CDs from the trailer and stopped by Albertsons to leave it at the service desk. When I informed the attendant I had something to leave for Doug, she told me they had no employee by that name. I even talked to the manager and described my encounter the previous evening, but they were adamant Doug was not an employee. That's when I really began to wonder if my encounter had been with an angel sent to meet my need. They finally agreed to keep the CD at the service desk with Doug's name on it, and I sometimes wonder what happened to it. Did Doug ever go in and pick it up? Did one of them finally take it home and listen to it? I may never know until I get to where I'm going. Epilogue. From the night Jim had this supernatural encounter, he retold this story many times, always in awe of God's gracious intervention in his life. Although he still struggled with the aftermath of brain damage, when we talked about his fear of death and his inability to understand abstract concepts, what the angel said continued to comfort him. We found Cody to be a refuge. The pace was slower and suited Jim's need for quiet. We found a small church that needed a worship leader and Sunday school teacher where he was loved and appreciated. God's leading had proven perfect, and we enjoyed almost 10 years together in this new place. On March 6, 2018, Jim suffered cardiac arrest and went home to be with the Lord. His faith is now sight, and I can imagine him reconnecting with Doug and shaking his head in wonder. You were right. You were from where I was going. Father, thank you for stories like this one that turn our hearts to you and encourage us to keep moving forward, even when it's uncomfortable. Thank you for your word that tells us in Hebrews 13:2, don't forget to show hospitality to strangers, for some who have done this have entertained angels without realizing it. Thank you for your precious promises and your Holy Spirit you have given us. Comfort and strengthen us in you and help us to remain open and ready to entertain even angels for your glory.